Darkcast Network. Indie pods with a dark side.
Just sit right there and you'll hear a tale of Darkcast shows that started with a tight-knit team, but look how much we've grown. As 2022 progressed, sadly some shows were lost, yet new ones joined up with the team, and now our network's boss. Hell yeah, our network's boss. Our shows cover the spooky things like cryptids, ghouls, and ghosts. The demons of your nightmares are best friends with our hosts. I bet they know our shows. The tone is dark and creepy. Some talk about disease, conspiracy, and murderers, mass hysteria, and some cults. So much true crime, and so much more, here on Darkcast Network.
Let's take a pause for the peculiar. Welcome to a place where we deconstruct conspiracy theories. We unwind unsolved mysteries, break down the bizarre, and discuss all things horror. Hey guys, it's Liz. I'm a career horror fanatic obsessed with the darker side of things. I've been a writer my whole life, and ever since I realized I drew inspiration from the unexplainable, my infatuation was born. The macabre is a way of life for me. I spend my days researching weird and creepy things to inspire my next short story. Join me each week as we take a pause for the peculiar.
Hey, I'm your best friend and worst influence. Enjoy me! Hey there, Rainbow Warriors, and welcome to Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBTQ+. Guess what happened to me the other day? Somehow, the door to the room where my sick cat stays was locked when I got up in the morning. What? I have no clue how it happened. The only thing I can think of is my kitty got tired of me forced bottle feeding her, and she said, "Bitch, you ain't coming in here no more and torturing me," and she locked the door. Well, I got into the room by breaking the door down. And trust me, it's much harder in real life than it is in the movies. I tell you guys, I was so stressed out about all of this. But now the door is just one more thing I have to add to my fix-it list. And I'm gonna have to buy a whole new door because I totally cracked it. And it's crazy how long this list is getting. I've got far too many home projects, you guys. Someday I will get to all of them. I hope. And if anyone wants to volunteer to come help me, hey, my door is broken. Please join me on the socials. I'm Rainbow Crimes nearly everywhere in Darkcast Network. Consider becoming a patron over on Patreon, where at the unicorn level you can get ad-free episodes, all episodes early, and an extra episode at the end of each month. Oh yeah, and I'll name a unicorn at the Seabreeze Studio Stables just for you. I'll put a link in the show notes to my Patreon account. Let me ask you this. When you hear of Sizzlers, what is it you think of? If you're in America, perhaps like me, you think of the Sizzler Steakhouse and Buffet Restaurant. Boy, they have the best cheesy garlic toast around. Sizzlers might mean something else to those of you in other countries. In the Cape Town area of South Africa, Sizzlers was a house converted into a business. The business was a gay massage parlor, which I believe clients got more than a simple massage, if you get my drift. Now hold that thought. We'll get back to Sizzler's gay massage parlor in just a bit. From past episodes, you may remember to be gay in South Africa can lead to much hate and discrimination. So-called straight men hate butch lesbians because they feel lesbians are out to take their women, which does happen. So these so-called straight men corrective rape lesbians to make them into straight women. I don't know, warriors. Something about a violent sexual assault by a man doesn't get my juices flowing. It would have absolutely the opposite effect on me, if I lived through it, because oftentimes in the act of corrective rape, the woman is murdered. Because that'll teach her. Many gay South African men have been murdered because they pose a threat to the straight men. More like the straight men are insecure with their own sexuality, and that's why they murder gay men. Although religion could be a part of it as well. The predominant religion in South Africa is Christianity, and we know how the different interpretations come from the main textbook used in this religion, the Bible, and how these interpretations can lead to hatred. All in all, there's no excuse for the hate, the violence, and the murdering of LGBTQ+ people anywhere. South Africa in the 1700s, the Quickie people indigenous to southwestern Africa were documented to have masturbated their same-sex friends. The Bantu people had their own cultural quirks as well. Many young boys were called boy wives. They were made to dress as women and do the work typically assigned to women at that time, such as cooking, fetching water, and firewood. Their elderly male partner would engage in what is called intercrural sex with their boy wives. Now, I've never heard of that term before, and I'm probably not even pronouncing it correctly. But it essentially means that their older husband would rub his penis between the boy's thighs to get off on the friction. However, the boy was not allowed to ejaculate, nor were they allowed to grow any facial hair. Some of them even had to wear fake boobs. Later, in more modern times, intercrural sex was practiced by all sexual orientations in various countries to combat contracting AIDS. Homosexuality is a big part of most all countries' history, and to deny it wasn't, it's just plain naive. I think that's why I have such a hard time knowing there is so much hate for my community. Come on, you haters! Know your history. It's in our lineage. So as we know, the tolerance, let alone the acceptance for the LGBTQ community in most areas of South Africa, it's pretty low. And there might be at least one thing involved in this case that will have you wondering if it was a hate crime. I believe it to be more of a crime of greed. But let's see if you agree. As of a few days ago, January 20th, we have hit the 20-year anniversary of the Sizzlers Massacre in Sea Point, Cape Town. On January 20th, 2003, it was business as usual for the Sizzlers Massage Parlor, which I mentioned before seemed to be the type of business specializing in happy endings. This day had no happy endings for 9 of 10 men. The men who worked there were as young as 17 years old, and a few of them were even straight men who were working in the sex trade industry just to make a living. One of the men was owner Aubrey Eric Otgar, who went by Eric. Eric condemned the use of drugs and alcohol in his establishment, but that doesn't mean all of the workers and clients abided by this rule. In fact, Eric had just fired a worker because he was caught using drugs while on shift at Sizzlers. The man who was fired went into Walter's Bar and Grill not long after he lost his employment, and he started to complain to whoever would listen about losing his job at Sizzlers. As it often happens, the more the man drank, the looser his tongue would get, until soon he was spilling comments about how much money Sizzlers made and how much money they had in their safe. The comments didn't fall on deaf ears. They were overheard by 2 men. One was the manager of Walter's Bar and Grill, Adam Wost, and the other was his friend, a taxi driver named Trevor Days. Adam and Trevor hung out regularly. They'd meet for coffee, they'd go out clubbing, and they'd just hang out at Adam's work. Both men were straight, but Trevor had recently lost a girlfriend to another woman. It would come out later 2 different versions of how things led up to the Sizzlers Massacre, and how things went down during the massacre. There was Trevor's version, and there was Adam's version. Both versions had the same result, unfortunately, but both versions pointed the finger at the other guy, ending that friendship, I'm sure. So let's start out with Trevor's version. Trevor said that he jokingly told Adam they could rob Sizzlers and get away with all the cash. Adam told Trevor because he was black it'd be easy for him to find guns for them to use. Well, that right there is a shitty insinuation. But Trevor thought about it, and he did own a gun, and so did his brother. They could use those guns to pull off the robbery. A few days later, Adam asked Trevor if he had any luck getting the guns, and Trevor lied, saying, "No, not yet." After Adam kept pestering Trevor, January 20th, Trevor showed up to Adam's with his gun and his brother's gun. He told Adam he was ready. Adam called Sizzlers and made an appointment to get a massage for that evening. When appointment time came, the security gate was unlocked for their arrival. Adam and Trevor were met by the manager. Adam told the manager he preferred blondes and was escorted to a room. Mid-walking to the room, Adam produced the gun and told the manager to take he and Trevor to the rest of the boys. One of the boys called for the owner, Eric, and told him that they were being robbed. Eric gave Adam and Trevor the cash that they had on the premises, which was only about 2,000 Ren, or 350 American dollars. Trevor didn't think it was worth it, but Adam pocketed the money. He then gathered most of the men in the house and had them lie down, and he and Adam tied them up with nylon cord. A man Trevor and Adam didn't see before walked into the kitchen, and while he went to take care of the man in the kitchen, Adam gave Trevor a knife. He told Trevor to slit the throat of each man. Trevor didn't want to, nor did he know how. Adam went into the kitchen and he struck the man in the kitchen and then shot him. He came back from the kitchen and he started to slit the throats of the men closest to him. Trevor told Adam he didn't want to slit their throats, but Adam said they both must do it. Trevor's cuts on the men's throats were not very deep, but Adam's were. Trevor claimed Adam's much bigger than he, and now he feared for his life as well. In Adam's version of events, Adam was sitting with the man who originally lost his job at Sizzlers. The fired man got very drunk and was telling him all about the money Sizzlers rakes in. Sitting nearby was Trevor, and he heard the conversation between Adam and the fired man. Days later, Trevor told Adam he wouldn't mind getting his hands on Sizzler's cash. Adam didn't think anything of it. It was more like Trevor was joking. The next day, Trevor went over to Adam's for a cup of coffee. He produced a pistol and handed it to Adam. He told Adam that's what he would use for the robbery, and Adam said he didn't know anything about guns. But the two got ski caps, rope, gloves, a knife, and a 2-liter bottle of gas, or petrol. They stopped at a public phone and Adam called Sizzlers and made an appointment for midnight. He asked for a blonde. When they arrived, they were led into a room. Trevor ordered Adam to gather the men and tie them up. Adam gave one of the men the rope to tie up his co-workers, but this did not please Trevor. He ordered Adam to do it himself. Then Trevor ordered Adam to stab the men to show him that they meant business. He was sure that they were hiding more money. After Adam stabbed the owner Eric and the two other men named Warren Visor and Quentin Taylor, he went looking through the house. A couple of the doors were locked. A man named Sergio Di Castro, wrapped in a towel from the waist down, emerged from one of the locked rooms. He went running from the room and Trevor went after him. Adam said he followed into the adjacent room and found Sergio lying naked on the floor. He then went into another room and found Gregory Burhaus sitting on a bed. Another captive asked Adam for some juice, and when Adam went into the kitchen to get him the juice, he was attacked by Gregory. Trevor came to Adam's assistance and he hit Gregory in the head with his gun. He pulled Gregory off of Adam. Adam went into the room where their hostages were tied up and he heard a gunshot. The scuffle between Gregory and Trevor had gotten intense and pushed off into the bathroom. In the bathroom, Trevor shot and killed Gregory. Trevor then rejoined the group of men, and without warning, Trevor started to shoot each man lying on the floor helplessly tied up. As you can see, warriors, both of these stories differ a little, in that each Adam and Trevor blamed the other one. They both try to come off as just a helper to the other, more nefarious of the duo. In the wee hours of the night of January 20th, 2003, Mark Hamilton took a taxi to the Sizzlers Massage Parlor location. He was a little surprised to see that the security gate was open, but he kept going. The front door was also ajar. That's odd, he thought. He peeked into the first room where the masseuse had slept. He saw 4 men laying on the floor. His brain was struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. He walked into the kitchen and he saw a knife on the table. With survival instincts, he picked up the knife and continued on in the house, seeing the other men lying on the floor, most likely dead. He quickly put the knife back where he found it and he headed out of the house to find safety. Safety came in the form of a gas station across the street. He was excited to see that the police were already at the gas station. He approached the officers, but they told him that they were busy with something right now. In front of them, on his knees, was a young man streaked in blood. He appeared to have duct tape wrapped around his neck, and he was crying and hysterical. He was saying, "I don't want to die." Police were trying to get answers from him. The young man was Quentin Taylor, the sole survivor of Sizzlers Massacre. Mark insisted to the police he knew where the injured man had come from, and there were others. He then told the police they should follow him across the street. The police walked into the House of Horrors, which came to be known as the Sizzlers Massacre. Police wanted Mark to follow him in, but Mark didn't want to, although he did. In Mark's initial walkthrough of Sizzlers, he thought all of the men in the house were dead, but now that he was back in the house with the police, they found 3 of the men still clinging to life. Those young men were Warren Visser, Marius Meyer, and Gregory Berghaus. Paramedics were called and the 3 men were rushed to the hospital, but not one of the 3 would make it. The other 6 men, owner Eric Otgar, Sergio Di Castro, Travis Reed, Stephen Foch, Johann Meyer, and Timothy Boyd, they were all taken to the morgue. At first, the police had difficulty naming the victims, as many times sex workers will use assumed names. Police also believed that the killings were due to rampant homophobia. Then they thought it seemed like the handiwork of a gang. The killings seemed to have a gang mentality behind it, opined the police. They started to seek out people they knew were involved in gangs. One gang in particular the police were looking at, they were appalled and horrified by the atrocious killings. They said it was too brutal even for them, and they'd keep their ears open on the streets for any word about the massacre. Another man, president of the LGBTQ Alliance in Cape Town, he said he believed it was the owner of another gay massage parlor, because that owner had called him believing he owned Sizzlers, and that owner made death threats to him. In the end, evidence led police to Adam Wost and Trevor Thays. The sole survivor, Quentin Taylor, assisted in identifying Adam and Trevor, and Quentin even told police Adam seemed to be the boss of the 2. This would make Trevor's version of the events much more credible. Both men were sentenced to life in prison without parole. For Trevor, he served his sentence until he died in prison. But Adam's sentence was overturned, and as of 2021, he had a shot at parole. I've not been able to find a definitive answer if Adam was granted parole, but the judge who overturned his life sentence without parole felt that Adam had been rehabilitated. Strange, because this monster was never remorseful through his arrest or trial. 9 men dead, 1 seriously injured, all for $350 cash. Outraged by the news of Adam's possible parole, as was Quentin Taylor, who escaped within inches of his life, but he had to undergo reconstructive surgery to his face because he not only had his throat cut, but he was shot in his head. Interestingly, Quentin was the only one of 10 men who laid on his back and not his stomach during the shootings. He bravely said, "I don't want to die, but I'm not afraid to die. And if I'm gonna die, I want to see it coming." It's assumed that the trigger man behind shooting Quentin wavered with his victim looking him in the eye. since all of the other shootings were in the back of the men's heads execution style. Rest in power, Eric, Marius, Sergio, Gregory, Warren, Stephen, Travis, Johan, and Timothy. And to Quentin, continue kicking ass each and every day, my friend. Our true crime quickie this episode comes to us from Detroit, Michigan. The Palmer Park area on Woodward Avenue is pretty well known for a good amount of LGBTQ people frequenting it during the daylight hours. But when the sun goes down, it becomes a hotbed of sex workers and trans killers. All too frequently, those sex workers are trans women, and they are the ones that are being murdered. But just who are the killers behind these crimes? One just happened to be a pastor of a Baptist church in Detroit. 46-year-old pastor Albert Weathers, who also worked at the Great Lakes Water Authority. He liked to frequent the trans sex workers at Palmer Park. While Albert cruised the trans sex workers, at home was his wife and daughter. And then you just know on Sundays this fucking hypocrite would be at his Baptist church preaching the evils of unwed sex and adultery. While Albert was out cruising for sex solicitation, he had a very bad habit. He would haggle for the price of services performed, and some of the trans sex workers refused to go with him because of it. On the night of December 7, 2018, trans activist and sex worker with a passion to create fashion, 36-year-old Kelly Stough, who also went by Kiana Mattel, was working the Palmer Park beat when Albert cruised by and saw her. He stopped, and she got into his car. The next time she was seen, she was being dumped out of Albert's car by a witness at McNichol Street and Brush Road. Kelly had been shot, and she was dead. Albert went home that night, and the next day he clocked into his water authority job. He dialed the police, and he told them he had shot someone who was trying to rob him. I gather in some sense he felt he was telling the truth, because this cheap motherfucker didn't like paying for the services rendered by the trans sex workers he picked up. Albert was arrested and charged with an open murder. This was the first time I had ever heard of this charge before, and I believe Michigan might be the only state in the U.S. that does it. An open murder means the judge allows the jury to decide if the crime was first or second-degree murder. At Albert's first trial, the judge had to remove herself because she had just contributed to a fundraiser for his wife and daughter, while Albert was in jail waiting trial so they could pay bills and keep their home. After the first judge removed herself, I was unable to find what Albert was sentenced to. The only thing I could really dig up on it was a denial for a leave appeal. It was dated January 2020. But I have a feeling good old cheap Albert, he's going to be in prison for a while. Let me tell you a little bit about our victim, Kelly. Her dead name was Tristan, and she graduated from high school, landing a scholarship to play football for a college in South Dakota. After a couple of years, she decided not to pursue football any longer. She needed to live her truth and be who she was. But in high school, even being large-framed and a football player, Kelly would get bullied because of some of her effeminate mannerisms. She'd go home upset, and her family would stand by her and tell her nothing was wrong with her. It was the other kids who needed an attitude adjustment. Even as Kelly came out as a trans woman, her family encouraged and supported her. As I had stated before, Kelly really wanted to break into the fashion design industry. She left the college in South Dakota after 2 years, and she enrolled in the Academy of Design and Technology in Chicago. After Kelly's death, her mother issued a plea for people to please see trans folk as human. They're someone's sister, daughter, brother, son. They have people who care about them, who love them. And to treat them as anything but human is criminal. Rest in power, Kelly. Love you, Rainbow Warriors. And remember, you matter. And it's not a crime to live your truth, unless you're a murderer.